What do you do when the world tells you that you don't belong in the cockpit, but destiny calls you to deliver the most important passenger of your career? A stretched limousine pulls up to the most exclusive wedding venue in the city. Inside that limo sits a woman who's about to make headlines, not for scandal this time, but for pure, elegant power. Behind the wheel, a black pilot who society said would never make it in aviation. Have you ever been so underestimated that people forgot you were even in the room? Malcolm Rivers knew that feeling every single day. While passengers questioned whether he could safely fly their plane, he was quietly becoming one of the most skilled commercial pilots in America. But on this particular afternoon in the late 1980s, Malcolm wasn't flying at 30,000 feet. He was driving at ground level, about to become part of the most legendary act of justice in high society history. If you've ever felt invisible because of who you are, this story will give you goosebumps. Hit that like button because you're about to witness how two people who were told they didn't belong ended up exactly where they needed to be. The year was 1989, and commercial aviation was still very much an old boys club. Malcolm Rivers walked through airport terminals in his crisp captain's uniform, watching passengers do double takes when they realized he'd be flying their plane. "Excuse me, are you the co-pilot?" They'd ask, even when his captain's bars were clearly visible. "No, ma'am, I'm your captain today." Malcolm would respond with a professional smile that never revealed the exhaustion behind it. The microaggressions came daily. Fellow pilots would forget to include him in briefings. Ground crew would question his flight plans twice as thoroughly as his white counterparts. Some passengers would literally request different flights when they saw him in the cockpit. Do you know what it's like to prove yourself every single day, even after you've already earned your place? Malcolm did. His wife Delilah watched him come home from red-eye flights, shoulders heavy with more than just fatigue. "Malcolm, you're not just flying planes," she'd tell him while their children slept. "You're flying for everyone who looks like you. Every safe landing you make opens the door a little wider." Those words kept him going through the worst shifts. When passengers complained about his presence to gate agents. When colleagues treated him like he was lucky to be there instead of qualified. When industry magazines featured pioneering pilots, but somehow never mentioned his name. Malcolm worked twice as hard for half the recognition. Double shifts, perfect safety records, flawless flight reviews. It still wasn't enough for some people. But here's what his critics didn't know. Malcolm wasn't just building a career. He was building character. Every slight, every question about his abilities, every passenger who looked nervous when they saw him, it all taught him something invaluable about grace under pressure. Drop a comment if you know someone who had to break barriers like Malcolm, because what happened next would prove that sometimes the people who doubt you the most are the ones who need your help the most. While Malcolm was fighting for respect in the skies, across town another story was taking shape, one that would collide with his in the most unexpected way. Preston Whitmore started small. A young man with big dreams and a high school sweetheart named Bernice who believed in him when he had nothing but ambition. She worked double shifts as a nurse while he flipped his first properties, celebrating every small victory together in their tiny apartment. "We're going to make it, Bernice," he'd promise her. "Just you wait." And make it he did. By the mid-1980s, Preston had built a real estate empire worth hundreds of millions. Luxury developments, commercial complexes, political connections. He had everything a man could want, everything except the humility to remember who helped him get there. Success changed Preston. The late-night strategy sessions became late-night parties. The humble gratitude became entitled arrogance. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of Bernice's unwavering support, suddenly felt ordinary to him. Enter Ivana Petrovich, a stunning runway model with legs for days and ambitions to match. The fare wasn't subtle. Paparazzi caught them at exclusive restaurants. Society columnists whisper about the billionaire and his new companion. Bernice read about her husband's betrayal in the same gossip magazines she used to flip through at the grocery store checkout. The divorce was brutal and public. Preston's lawyers painted Bernice as a gold digger who contributed nothing to his success. The man who once promised her the world now claimed she deserved nothing from it. Within months of the divorce being finalized, Preston announced his engagement to Ivana. The wedding would be the social event of the season, a lavish celebration of his new beginning. But Preston had forgotten something important. He'd underestimated the wrong woman. Current word count, 278 words. Bernice didn't cry for long. After the shock wore off, something stronger took its place. Determination. She looked around her modest apartment, the same one she'd moved to after Preston's lawyers finished with her, and made a decision that would change everything. I'm not disappearing quietly, she told herself. Not after giving him the best 20 years of my life. But Bernice had something Preston never counted on, her 5 adopted daughters. These weren't biological children. They were young women she'd rescued from the foster system over the years, giving them love when the world had given them rejection. They were her real family, built on choice and loyalty instead of obligation. "Mom, what are we going to do?" her eldest daughter asked, seeing the wedding announcement in the society pages. Bernice smiled for the first time in months. "We're going to remind everyone who I am." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. 5 identical dazzling outfits, coordinated but not costume-like. A stretch limousine, because if Preston wanted to make statements with his money, she'd make one with style. And most importantly, she needed a driver who understood what it meant to be dismissed, someone who wouldn't be intimidated by high society stares. That's when Malcolm Rivers entered the picture. A friend of a friend knew about his reputation. Not just as a skilled pilot, but as a man of integrity who understood dignity under pressure. Are you Team Bernice? Because what she did next became the stuff of legends. Let me know in the comments. The cathedral was packed with the city's elite. Designer gowns, expensive suits, and enough diamonds to fund a small country glittered under the stained glass windows. Preston stood at the altar in his custom Italian tuxedo, beaming as Ivana walked down the aisle in her $50,000 dress. The ceremony had just reached the speak now or forever hold your peace moment when the rumble of an engine cut through the organ music. Outside, a pristine stretch limousine pulled up to the cathedral steps. The guests near the windows turned their heads. Murmurs rippled through the pews. This wasn't on the program. Malcolm Rivers sat behind the wheel, his hand steady as always. He'd flown through thunderstorms that would terrify most pilots. But this moment felt different. This wasn't about altitude or weather. This was about justice. "Ready, ladies?" Bernice asked her daughters from the back seat. "We're ready, Mom." They replied in unison. The limousine doors opened like a choreographed performance. First, Bernice emerged, stunning in an elegant black dress that commanded attention without screaming for it. Then, one by one, her 5 daughters stepped out. Each wore an identical outfit, bold, beautiful, and impossible to ignore. The cathedral doors swung open. 6 women walked in formation down the center aisle. Not rushing, not dramatic, just walking with the quiet confidence of people who knew exactly where they belonged. Every head turned. Phones came out. Whispered conversations stopped mid-sentence. Preston's face went from confusion to recognition to absolute horror. Ivana clutched her bouquet tighter. The minister froze with his mouth half open. But Bernice never looked at Preston. She didn't need to. Her presence said everything. "I built you. I supported your dreams when you had nothing. I am not invisible, and I am not forgotten." The 5 daughters flanked their mother like a royal guard. Not threatening, not angry, just there, representing 2 decades of love, sacrifice, and family bonds that divorce papers couldn't break. The guests sat in stunned silence. This wasn't the scandal they expected. This was something more powerful, a woman reclaiming her story in real time. Bernice reached the front of the church, made eye contact with Preston for exactly 3 seconds, then turned and walked back out with the same grace she'd entered with. Her daughters followed, their heads high, their message delivered without a single word spoken. The entire encounter lasted less than 5 minutes, but would be talked about for decades. Malcolm held the limo door open, giving Bernice a respectful nod as she climbed in. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is simply refusing to be erased. The footage went viral before social media even existed. Wedding guests had captured the moment on their cameras, and within hours, local news stations were calling it the most elegant act of justice in high society history. Malcolm Rivers found himself thrust into an unexpected spotlight. The The same industry colleagues who once questioned his abilities were now praising his character. That's the kind of pilot you want in your corner, veteran captains told reporters. Steady hands, good heart. But Malcolm wasn't interested in fame. He was proud of Bernice's courage and honored to have played a small part in her reclaiming her dignity. Sometimes the best flight you'll ever take, he told journalists, doesn't involve leaving the ground. Bernice became a symbol of grace under pressure. Instead of disappearing into shame, she transformed her pain into power. The 5 daughters who stood with her that day spoke openly about chosen family and the strength that comes from supporting each other through betrayal. Preston's new marriage lasted exactly 18 months. Ivana left him for a younger billionaire, citing his emotional baggage in the divorce papers. The man who thought he could erase his past discovered that some stories write themselves into legend. Malcolm's career soared to new heights. Airlines competed to hire the pilot who'd proven that technical skill and moral character were equally important. His story inspired a generation of aviators who learned that breaking barriers in the sky was just the beginning. Malcolm Rivers and Bernice proved that being underestimated can become your greatest advantage. When the world tells you that you don't belong, sometimes the best response is to show up exactly where you're needed most. Their story reminds us that true power isn't about revenge. It's about refusing to be invisible. Malcolm's steady hands didn't just guide aircraft through storms. They helped deliver justice with grace. Bernice didn't need to shout or cause a scene. Her presence spoke louder than any words ever could. The next time someone tells you that you don't have what it takes, remember this story. Sometimes the people who doubt you the most are the ones who end up needing your help. If this story moved you, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Subscribe to Amber Halo for more stories that prove ordinary people can create extraordinary moments of justice. What would you have done in Bernice's situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one.